this time exists in. So if I talk about time on a different planet, what I'm using a clock to do is I'm trying to define time using a clock, or like trying to hold time using a clock. That's what I would say that identity and the self does. The identity will talk about the self, but the self is completely different from identity. So, different tangent.
Bro, that's a whole other video.
Different tangent.
That's like 2 hours worth of podcast easy.
But if I'm talking about time here on Earth versus time on a different planet, the reason time would move differently on a different planet is because time inherently in that different planet works differently. Much differently. But the same clock would be applicable there?
No, not necessarily.
So the way I change the way the seconds move and the milliseconds move, that changes there? I don't completely get the space.
Well, you would need a whole new convention of what time means by defining, or you would need a whole new clock by defining what considers to be like the hours, minutes, and days, because on Earth it's based on the rotation rate, and the rotation takes 24 hours and some change for going from one daytime to the next daytime. But that's not necessarily the same rotation rate that another planet or another moon has, right? And then you can also have cases where the body's tidally locked to something. So the classic example is our moon is tidally locked to Earth, where we always see the same side of it. It doesn't actually rotate where we get to see its other side. And if you have that, how can you ever distinguish between time when there's no change in sunlight and one side is constantly facing the sun while the other one is not? And you just have that stark contrast where it's one side of the planet is always daytime and then one side is always nighttime.
Yeah.
How does a clock work there?
But that's again me trying to perceive time in that place and not talk about its time.
But you would still have to measure time in some case if you're there physically. Like we spoke about earlier. Anytime matter is occupying space and it's moving through it, there needs to be a measure of how long it's taking it to do so. Well, it doesn't have to be, but then
that's again us
it
perceiving
doesn't
it.
have to be. Yeah. But
but if I use the same clock that I built here because of the rotations here, I use it on a different planet, regardless of how slow everything's moving there. I'm still talking about time there. So if I'm saying that, like you spoke about, if I take a spaceship and I go out, and then if I come back, I've aged differently than people who are already living here. That's technically time travel.
In a way, yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that. I mean, that is one of the theories in science to say that you've time traveled. But the issue with that is that engineering-wise, we're not there, that we can travel even at the fraction of the speed that we have to travel to have those effects or have significant effects.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah. No, it is. But, one other thing to hit on is, just to be clear, any clock that you take from Earth to any other planet or moon, it's likely not going to work. Like, you will need something new, just engineering wise, because even just in the ISS, it ticks slower than it does on Earth, and we know that for sure. So as the farther along we go, the more different it's going to get. And it could be slower. Most likely it's going to be slower.
And I did not know that. Firstly, I did not know that the clock physically changes the way it moves.
Physically
I thought it's more of like a construct I've created that time is moving slow there. Like I thought the clock will work the same way.
Well, it's both, because the clock itself is also rooted in Earth engineering principles. If you take it, like let's say the hand itself physically moves, right? If the gravity is different, the hand is going to move differently. Why would it move the same?
Okay, but what if I have a digital clock?
I think for that one, no, it would still. I think it still needs some engineering modifications, but for that,
theoretically,
I think what we would have to do is look into how a digital clock is actually developed, what makes it go from 1 second to the next, like what's the true measure of it, and how that can actually be applied to a place where we're not in just Earth conditions anymore. Because even the most of the digital clocks, like if you take them in high pressures or extreme temperatures, some of them are going to break apart.
Yeah.
So you got to be able to withstand the temperatures and pressures of the other planetary bodies as well to begin with. Like, so basic engineering would definitely be needed for any clock to work on any other place except Earth. So when we do think about space exploration in the future, and we think about, having habitats on the moon and Mars and such, we are going to need new kinds of infrastructure, but in my head, it's just an easy improvement on what we already have, because similar to what we did on Earth with different time zones and stuff, I feel like someone's going to figure it out, and it's not going to be me.
Not me either.
Yeah, that's...
I don't even know that's a thing. Till now. Like,
Yeah.
I know the measurements change, like, often enough. That's what, even like the pendulum thing, class 6 physics, I don't remember much, but it needs to be readjusted often enough. That's what I remember.
What do you mean, readjusted?
Like, because of friction, with if we measure time with the pendulum, because of the way friction works, it needs to be readjusted. So that's my memory from 6th grade. So I know that those stuff has to be like tinkered with, but I didn't know that a clock would move differently in a different place.
Yeah, but if you're in a vacuum space, you wouldn't technically have any friction, so you
Yeah,
bypass
but
that issue.
you've not. Have we reached a space where there's complete vacuum in that space?
Outer space?
No, like here. Like if I'm talking about my pendulum space.
Yeah. I mean, it may not be like...
It's
but it's most of the time, we have vacuum chambers in chemistry labs and such where it's like completely deoxygenated, no gas is present at all.
Stop. I used to think there's...
Yeah.
It's still like
Yeah,
there.
blood
Like
and stuff.
Like, I thought theoretical vacuum is different from my physical vacuum.
What do you mean your physical vacuum?
Like-
Like the shit you used to clean stuff?
No. I mean, like my theoretical vacuum in the sense that if I'm thinking about something like gravity right now, then the gravity constant that I'm working with is different from the gravity that's working in different places. So in my head, the concept of vacuum is that theoretically it means that there's nothing present there, no air, nothing at all. But I thought in physical space, I couldn't achieve complete vacuum. That's why there are...
Why not?
I just thought we didn't have the engineering to be able to do that yet. Like, I don't know, what's me.
I think we do.
Do we?
Can we achieve true vacuum in lab environments? Definition. So ChatGPT did say theoretically impossible with our current understanding of technology and technology. Sorry. Definition of a true vacuum: a region of space entirely devoid of matter, energy, and quantum fluctuations, completely empty. In contrast, even the best vacuum chambers contain tiny amounts of residual gas molecules influenced by quantum effects. Like, okay, yes, that's true. That is very true. But that's the best we can do. Anyways, technological limitations, reducing pressure to 10 to the negative 12 torr, which it's like that's pretty high vacuum stuff in a lab, but not absolute emptiness.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But then by that logic, true vacuum, I guess, doesn't exist anyway, because even in empty space, you always have dark matter or dark energy places.
Yeah.
So, shit.
So where did this come from? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Where did we come on to with vacuum?
Pendulum.
Yeah.
Pendulum swinging, and your like fluctuations, tiny fluctuations.
Friction, yes.
Friction.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a cool tangent, though.
Do you think, absolutely remember, do you think that firstly we spoke about the image system, right? Like if I take a picture of us right now, then it's at a particular time, but it's not the same time as the clock time that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Could talk about it, but we're not talking about that right now. Do you think that in that space that I'm talking about, the image space that I'm talking about, if I exist right here, right now, on this sofa, Of course, nothing else can exist right here, the same space, same like area. I'll have to talk about time then, right? So, like, do you think that in that space, do you think time exists? Does that make sense?
So you're saying you're personally like occupying a space,
Correct.
but no other matter can occupy the same space as that.
Correct. I'm saying that if I'm occupying this space right now, no other thing can occupy this space right now, and the reason I can talk about that uh, is because of the concept of time,
Ooh,
right? Because
I don't quite understand.
say right now I'm sitting here, right now I have to specify that right now, right? I'm
Yes,
sitting
you're
here.
here.
Then if I had to talk about any other substance being in the same space, like that's occupying this space, I'll have to talk about a different time in which it will occupy the same space. Because at this moment, I'm occupying this space. So I'll have to use the concept of time to be able to talk about any space being occupied. No.
Are we talking only about physical matter occupying a specific space? Because if so, then yes. But if you go beyond physical matter, then no. Because then energy exists at all places at all times. Like even energy is flowing like through us right now. Like there's different kinds of radio waves or all these different frequencies that are around us at all times. So they're also occupying the same space.
Okay, say I'm in a 3D box, and I'm talking about my three dimensions there. And then in that 3D box, I am occupying some space.
Yeah.
And I obviously like have a specific amount of space I take up, and exactly like I can find the coordinates at which I'm taking up that kind of space.
Yeah.
At any given moment, I'll have to be able to talk about me sitting in that space using time. But if I'm talking about other energies passing through, assume that there is no energy passing through me. That's an assumption I'm making.
Okay.
Assume there is nothing else passing through me, right? It's just me.
Just you. So it's a closed box system, just you.
Correct. Then I'll have to talk about time as a concept there.
If there's an observer, yes. If there's no observer, then no, because it wouldn't matter whether time exists or not if you're in that closed box loop or in that closed box system.
So then,
like, what are you using that as a proxy for? Like, what are you trying to find based on that?
That at any given point, if I'm talking about some matter occupying some space, I'll have to use the concept of time along with it, because at any given point, that matter can change its space altogether. Then you're not talking about just the matter, you're talking about the matter in accordance to time.
I don't know the answer, obviously.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I don't know if you need a definition for matter when matter is occupying space. I think you need time when matter starts to move through space and not just occupy it. So that would mean like you're not just static, you're moving through
But
space.
tree is there. A tree will probably like break down, or like something will happen, some weather will ruin it in some way or form. I'll still have to talk about time now, because like if a tree is growing at a particular spot, I'm still talking about time then.
But if it's growing, it is moving because it's moving upwards. So it is moving through space. So in that way, inherently, time is already part of the equation.
Yeah.
But if it's completely static, where it doesn't change, it doesn't move, it doesn't grow leaves or shed leaves, then
you've stopped time.
yeah,
So
time doesn't exist in that sense. Or at that time, bro.
Wait, this is kind of freaky. So if I'm talking about any change at any point, obviously change includes dy by dx and by dt. But if I'm talking about any movement, I'll have to talk about time. And if I'm talking about any substance here, I don't have to talk about time.
Not necessarily. unless it starts moving to some extent. Which, if you think about it, nothing's ever really static. Everything is always moving because molecules are always in constant vibration, right? Quantum mechanics. We don't know the location of the electron. We only know the probability density.
So then time exists, even when something's static. Technically not static, but static.
Yeah. And to universe, like on a grander scheme, time exists because the universe is expanding. The universe is moving.
But that's again the observer theory. Because
Well, even if we weren't there to observe it, the universe would still be what it is. And based on what we know, it's expanding.
Yeah.
But I think you're right though, that is part of the observer effect for sure. Where like someone has to be there to see it happen for it to make sense or for it to actually be happening. I don't know. No man, that stuff is always trippy.
That's some different tangent.
Dude, how long has this been going? Check. 47 minutes. It's not bad.
I don't think I could talk about time this much.
Me neither, dude.
Okay. If I had a rod with me right now.
Wait, is it still about time?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I had a rod with me right now, and it has measurements, I say this rod is 2 meters long. Then I can talk about the length of it, which is a dimensional property. If I take an image of the same rod, like if I take an image of, like if I'm sitting here with the rod here, and you're watching me with the rod here, like where you're sitting, I'm not telling you what size it is. It's just something, but it's a 2 meter rod. You'd probably guess some value. And like if I'm sitting like way far ahead with no, just the rod here, not me here, like there's no comparison, and the rod is here. You probably see the rod in a completely different, like a smaller size, right? So if I'm talking about capturing time, like again back to the photo, talking about capturing time again, then am I talking about the time that I'm like a smaller amount of time that's there, or am I talking about time in a different sense? Wait, this needs to be phrased correctly. So if I'm talking about the rod, I have a rod with me, and you're sitting here. You'll see the rod at its different length versus if you're sitting there. But but the rod still exists right now with me, and it has a particular value and it has particular dimension. But I don't think I can see time in the same way. But it's still a dimension. Like time is existing. Time has its like own concept of 2 meters in a different space altogether. But I'm not seeing time the same way as I'm seeing this physical rod. It's still dimension.
Sure? Question mark? What do you mean though? Like where are you heading with this?
Like I'm seeing a rod in a dimensional space, very different from me seeing time that exists and has a particular value in a different space. But they're still dimensions. So what I'm getting at with this is that if I'm like, what do you think about like me looking at this space dimensional space different from the time dimensional space? Because they're different things, but we talk about them together. Like we establish that we can talk about space with time, and we can talk about space without time. But where does time lie then?
No, time, it's an inherent property. It is. It's always there. I would have to read up, I would have to reread some stuff and revisit, because the more I'm thinking, well, first your example of the photo, that we can capture time through videography. Like a video does capture time because you're capturing movement. So I think movement is an important part of figuring out how we're going to track time. So as soon as you add movement in a photo, even so, if you take time lapse or something like that, take multiple photos back to back to back, and you put them together, you track time in a way because you track movement. But the other side of thing is, if matter moving space creates time, then some part of the opposite, there's an inverse of that as well happening, where I have something in my mind, but ChatGPT will help.
Wow, that was such a convoluted way of me asking the question. What do you think?
One sec. So, you read the book or you haven't, Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza.
But I know what it talks about because I've heard the podcast, I've heard the book.
Yeah, so you read it, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So he, in his book, he also uses this concept, matter moving through space equals time, and then he introduces the opposite of it, but I can't remember what it was, so I'm asking ChatGPT what it is. But let's see what it says. Space-time, yeah, as matter moves, it interacts with the fabric of space and time, creating the perception of change or time. And then, so the opposite side that Joe Dispenza says in his book Supernatural is energy moving through space I'm going to repeat all of that. Yeah. The initial notion we started with was matter moving through space equals time. The flip side of things is energy moving through time equals space. What do you think about that?
Wait, what? Again? Wait, what again?
Energy moving through time equals space.
Yeah.
This suggests a shift in focus.
No, what was the second?
This was the second one. The first one was matter moving through space equals time.
I don't see a difference in.
Well, one of them, the first one, matter moving through space equals time, is talking about everything or something.
Yeah, I know. I don't see a difference because like I don't see it. Like I can't think of concrete examples. I can't see that space. I can't see that.
For the second one?
Yeah.
Energy moving through time equals space. Let's see what this guy said. This ties into meditations. That's the example that you would be looking for. Because when you close your eyes, you're trying to walk away from time as we know it and enter some eternal moment where time basically doesn't exist, but space does, right?
But we were also talking about that time needs to be incorporated to be a part of space. We spoke about the example where we spoke about the chair that's taking up space, but it doesn't have to capture time at that moment. But this is talking about, this inherently holds time when I'm talking about this.
Why?
Isn't it saying energy moving through time is equal to space?
But where is the energy moving
We
here?
spoke about the particles moving here. There's still some movement. If something has to take up space, it says that it needs to have time.
Yeah, well, this example is inherently true for both of those things.
Yeah.
Yes. Because if you think about energy moving through time, that's basically describing the nature of atoms or molecules vibrating on a molecular level, where that's creating this space, literally.
Yeah. How is that different from the meditation space? Because time is still existing.
Time exists outside of the meditation, yes, in this physical world. But when your eyes are closed and you're in your awareness, what makes you think time exists?
When I can't keep my back straight for too long, and I'm like.
But that's in the physical world. That's your physical body senses, not your awareness.
But then my awareness is not, like if my eyes are shut, I'm not even looking at my space.
And that's the point.
So then,
Because you're entering a different realm.
so then I'm not seeing time or space. It's not just time.
But your energy, which is your awareness at that time, is moving through the perceivable time of the human world, right? Because time, like you said, is passing by, however long you're meditating. But your energy, your awareness is moving through it, so it's creating a space, and that space is, I think, the way I'm seeing it, is what you visualize in your mind at that time, whatever the fuck that may be.
But if I'm moving, assumption is being made that I'm moving from my physical space to my mental space, whatever's inside, then if I'm talking about a time existing here, then I'm talking about a time in a different concept existing here.
But it would be right, but it would be very different, right? It doesn't have to be the same set of time, because if you're in your mind, you can make up time to be whatever you want. You can live 10 lifetimes.
But then that's me talking about individualism versus collectivism. Because then
for sure,
time still exists, but I'm not talking about time in the sense that how everyone talks about time. I'm talking about time just as time. Like it's talking again, like talking about self and identity. If I'm existing with you in a particular space, my idea of me is very different when I'm existing with you in this space versus when I'm talking about my idea of me in my head is a very different space. So coming back to a different tangent again, but like time is still existing, it's just a different way of representing time. So then we come back to language and how we as humans use language to be able to talk about time in different spaces and the nuances of time. So something that's coming to my head is then what is time for an animal? Because they are not looking at the clock in the perception of, but at the same time they are, because while I was training my dog, like I want to say 8 years ago, it had its own clock of when it has to pee and when it has to go shit and when it has to eat unless something happens and we can't, whatever. But he also has a concept of time which is different from going on a different tangent. It also has a concept of time that's different from the time that exists in our physical reality. Like the clock system, that's what I mean.
And I think this just goes back to some of the initial stuff, that this is all just human, that we made up time to make sense of things.
So is time a social construct?
It is.
But time also exists.
No, but see, here's the thing. Fundamentally, yes, it exists, but the way we label it is different. And the way we label it in our personal lives is also very different. And that goes back to the individualism versus collectivism thing. In terms of animals specifically, I think that's the best example to use to talk about how even though time as a property in itself is fundamental and present in the universe in some form, it may not be called time, but it's definitely something that's perceived and by animals who don't even understand human foundations of time. That also goes, but I have to say that part also stretches into a lot of biology and neurobiology and like how routines and habits are something that we're biologically hardwired to want routines and to want repetitive patterns to make our lives easier because we want to be in the least energetic state as possible. Like that's core, right? Then you can go into chemistry as to why that is. So I think that also has more nuance there, where it's not just about how we perceive time and stuff, but that biological clock that's coming in is a factor of a lot of other things too. It's pretty cool to think about. I don't know how to close this.
So do you think time is do you think time is a social construct? In its entirety?
No. I think there's a clear distinction in my mind. The word time in itself and the definition of how we use it now is language that we've come up with to describe a phenomenon that we notice and perceive and can actually measure around us at all times. So in that way, that phenomenon itself is universal, fundamental, I think, exists, is part of life, or life as we know it, and probably like in the universe itself, but the way we've labeled it and the way we continue to define it or build on it sometimes may start being more subjective.
Ishan's camera died on us again.
So this time I actually don't think the camera died. I think it just overheated, which, whatever dude, whatever the fuck. The video's gonna be edited, so we'll be okay. I wonder if this part is even gonna make it into the video, if it's gonna be edited.
I'll decide that later.
Keep it in. But we should wrap it up. We've had a long discussion about time that I never thought was gonna be possible.
Me either.
But it was a very insightful discussion for me. So let's wrap up. I think the last thoughts that we had were ending with,
Is time a social construct?
and I think I gave my part of things.
I think we use time as a big canopy to hold into a lot of other nuances, and like this is exactly where we started off, where we said that if there are different aspects that I'm talking about, I would use the word time very differently and I'll talk about time very differently. So I think time is a social construct if I'm talking about it in a space where it is a social construct, but time at the same time exists independent of the social construct. So I think time exists differently in different spaces.
Yeah, I feel like you're making the same sort of argument that I did.
Yeah. Is it?
But yeah, it's honestly mind-fucking to think about how we use language to describe certain fundamental things
Maybe we should talk about language more.
in life. No, we should. When you watched the Lex Friedman podcast with Sarah Walker,
Some of it.
and for context, this is backstory. I'm a big fan of Lex Friedman's podcast, and recently recorded a podcast with Dr. Sarah Emari Walker, who is an astrobiologist and theoretical physicist that studies life and origins of life, perception of life, things like that. And check out her work if you're interested. But anyways, she's someone who believes that language is very important, and you have to be careful and curate exactly it is that what you see in your head, so it also makes sense to the other person, because we all communicate very differently, we all perceive things very differently, so it is important to be careful and considerate of the way we express things, especially when you're talking about fundamental phenomenon like time that is there, perceivable, we can measure, but we've also given it such weird definitions in our everyday lives that we're able to have these weird conversations about it.
That comes back to my canopy, that word,
Yeah.
like time as a canopy.
And it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's wrap it up here. If you made it this far into the video, first of all, that's crazy because it's a long one.
You're slightly cuckoo in the head.
Just like us. It'd be like that though. Enjoy it, because that's it's a part of you that separates you from everyone else. Don't lose sight of that. But yeah, if you got something out of the video, let us know in the comments below if there were certain things that you found interesting, and let us know if there's a certain topic that you would like for us to dissect, because I have a feeling this might not be our first and last podcast together, hopefully. So yeah, let us know.
And welcome to the third round.
We'll catch you in the next one.